Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to do just a general discussion of nihilism and the forms I see it take in the world. I think nihilism is ultimately one of the biggest causes of a lot of the sadness I see in our culture, and I do see a lot of sadness in the modern culture. I think that a lot of people don't have answers, and they're not taught to be rational, and they live life with very nihilistic premises, which leads them to very negative psychologies and ultimately to sadness. So to begin with, just for a simple definition of nihilism, nihilism is just generally this idea that everything else is meaningless. The world is meaningless, life is meaningless, nothing matters. And ultimately, from my experience, I've seen it take two major forms. Just depression, just straight up just like locking yourself away, not feeling motivated at all, feeling super sad all the time, just because nothing matters. Why would I care? And destructive nihilism, which is just the idea, none of this matters, so I'm just going to do whatever the fuck I want and just destroy shit and fuck everyone else. Yeah, those are kind of the extremes of each end. But I do see these general principles in a lot of people, and I think that is one thing that we probably need to solve. So, depressive nihilism in general will lead to depression, while destructive nihilism will lead to drifting throughout life. So, the drifting is just the idea that you don't focus on anything and you kind of just ignore reality, and this obviously leads you to do very destructive behaviors, because if you don't focus on anything, you'll just destroy things. Like that's something that I have generally noticed, that when my own psychology, when I drift a lot, I notice that I'm more prone to want to get mad or something. Yeah, those sort of things. And it's like when people are drunk, they're more willing to fight, they're more willing to break shit. So that's the general idea of drifting. And depression, obviously, I feel like that's a more obvious connection from depressive nihilism to depression. So I feel like most of y'all can probably make that connection. So yeah, and each of these are very negative aspects of reality that I've noticed in or negative aspects of psychology that I've noticed in a lot of people in the world. I think most people are either to some extent depressed or drifters. And both of these psychologies, they can't necessarily exist on their own. You can't be a happy drifter, and you can't be a depressed person who doesn't drift in the long run, because ultimately those philosophies will collapse in on each other. Because if you keep drifting, what you ultimately realize is all this stuff that you're doing, it means nothing. Your life has become meaningless. There's no focus to it, and that ultimately, when you begin to inevitably start thinking and start somewhat focusing on stuff, you notice that you become extremely depressed. And the same thing with depressed people. When they constantly think these negative thoughts, they want to avoid them. They want to avoid all these thoughts as much as possible, so they begin to drift. So that leads them to begin doing drugs to numb the pain. That general idea. That's actually really fucking prevalent in music, which is, yeah. So I guess those are two things that are very common in music, and I think this type of music appeals to a lot of people because that is how a lot of people think at the moment. So I'd say the causes of each of these types of nihilism and these forms of nihilism, I guess, would be, for depressive nihilism, it's just the idea of self-doubt. If you don't think that you have the ability to succeed in the world or to achieve things, or you feel like you will inevitably be lonely, or that people look down on you, or that, yeah, all these negative thoughts about yourself, that you're not a good person, that all these negative things, those will ultimately lead you to depression, because you think that your life will ultimately be meaningless in the end, that you can never achieve happiness. And since happiness is the purpose with which you act in life, or that someone should act in life, and I think most people ultimately deep down want to act that way, and if their explicit premises contradict that, that's actually a really negative type of psychology as well. But depression, you begin to think that your life is meaningless. you begin to feel really sad because you doubt yourself, because you don't think that you can ever achieve happiness. And then for destructive nihilism, or drifting, that comes from just a lack of focus on anything. If you don't want to focus on any part of life, you don't view it as having any meaning. You don't view it as worth your effort of focusing on. So this lack of focus leads you to become a drifter. It leads you to drift and not focus on anything, and ultimately, at its extreme end, it starts leading you to destroy things. But ultimately, this destructive nihilism begins with yourself. Like, this whole drifting mentality is very self-destructive. So what is the solution to both of these problems? I'd say the solution to depression is just self-esteem. You just need to believe in yourself. You just need to trust yourself and what you say. You can't doubt yourself. If you're going to say something or do something, you can't get to your own head about it. You can't think like, oh my god, what is this person gonna think? What is this person gonna think? Or, oh, I'm so fucking weird. Why would I do that? You just gotta send it. You just do your shit. Don't fucking think about what other people think. Don't doubt yourself. Don't think you're being a bad person. I mean, obviously, like, to some extent, you need to think, like, criticize your own actions to an extent, because you want to be rational about things. But depression is characterized by an irrational over-focus and over-doubt on what you're doing. And you just doubt everything about yourself, which is a very negative way to think about things. And then the solution to destructive nihilism is just focusing on things. You need to focus on every aspect of reality and integrate that into your mind and be more rational. Like, because when you drift, you're not rational at all. You need to focus on things in reality if you want to live and be happy. So, I mean, ultimately, when you drift, you just drift to short-term thing after short-term thing, and you just destroy yourself in the process. But when you begin to focus on things, you notice that these short-term things, they're not going to be fulfilling in the long run. So then you begin to focus and think, okay, so these are the things I need to do now if I want to be happy in the long run, or this is how I can be happy now, where it's not sacrificing my long-run happiness. And ultimately, all of these things are summed up by rational egoism, which is Ayn Rand's ethical philosophy. You have to believe in yourself. You have to live for yourself, believe in yourself, have self-confidence, and you have to be rational about it. You need to focus on reality. The focus and self-esteem are both crucial aspects to rational egoism. And so that is why I believe rational egoism is ultimately the solution to nihilism and the solution to all the negative aspects of the culture today. So, that's all I have to say for today. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Peace.